me reset my camera here, guys. Give me 1 second. There we go. I think that's a little better. All right. So welcome everybody. It's good to see you all. Doug Johnson. I'm the teacher for this class. And we have a nice full class today. It's a good thing we've got plenty of space on the internet. We're not going to run out of room. So a few things I wanted to cover before we start. Those are the props, pretty standard stuff for a yin class. And I know not everyone has props at home. It's not a bad investment. They'll last you a lifetime. They don't generally wear out. So you can generally buy one set. As long as it's decent quality, it's probably last you the rest of your life. So if you do not have the bolster, which is the big pillow, do you not see video? Dad was asking about video. Do you not see me? Okay, so Meredith can see me and Kenneth can see me. Dad, are you having trouble seeing me?
Yeah, I'll try to join back in.
Okay, all right. Okay, Deborah can see me as well. All right, good. All right, so Dad's going to come back. So anyway, while we're waiting for him to get back, bolster could be like a couch pillow. Blanket could be like a towel, like a beach towel or something, if you don't have that kind of particular blanket. And then blocks, those are the hardest ones, and they're some of the most useful props. So if you're on a tight budget, maybe invest in some foam blocks. Make sure they're not too squishy. Okay, make sure that they're firm. So that's the only thing you really need to look out for. I've seen some blocks that are really squishy, and sometimes you don't want them to be so soft. So they need to be somewhat firm. Okay. All right. Okay, Uta, you left and then came back. It's good to see you, by the way. I haven't seen you in a few weeks. I hope you're feeling a little better. Okay, so I want to cover now the sequence that we're doing today. So we're doing an unusual sequence. So I have a lot of yin classes that are just straight up yin yoga, textbook yin yoga, which is great. I love teaching those classes. But I studied yin yoga with the gentleman who first took those two words and put them together. His name is Paul Grilly. You can look him up. And there's a DVD called Yin Yoga. The reason it's called Yin Yoga is because it was the first DVD with those two words together. He also has a book called Yin Yoga. That's it. That's I think it's called Foundations of a Quiet Practice. And so that book, again, written by my teacher. So I've studied for many years with Paul. About 5 years in a row, I would go out to California and study with him for a few weeks, and then I'd come back. And I learned a ton from him. But one of the things I learned from him is sort of the parameters of what yin yoga really is. What is and what isn't yin yoga. So today, if you go to a yoga studio, sometimes you sign up for a yin class, and it might be a lovely class. It might be a lovely yoga class, but it's not actually a yin yoga class, okay? Because they're just not following certain principles. Likewise, there can be an unusual class like this one that we're going to do that might not feel like yin, but because it follows the right principles, it absolutely is a yin class, okay? So again, what gives me the authority to create a sort of unorthodox yin class? That because I've studied for years with the gentleman who created this style. I know the parameters of what is and isn't a yin class, all right? So hopefully you love this class. I do. I like doing things that are different as much as I like a straight ahead yin class. I also like a yin class that is different and gets into different things. So what is different about today's class? Well, today we're going to work the shoulders as well as the hips. And yin usually focuses on the area from below your ribs to above your knees. So all in this area here. But we're going to move up into the shoulders. And usually with Paul, we work the shoulders in a yang way, in an active way. And I have a class called Yang Yoga, and we do push-ups and we do things with the upper body. But today we're going to explore the upper body in a yin way. Okay, and so that's already different. The other part that's different is we will be holding for just a minute. So I'd say if you're doing poses and you're not even holding a minute, then you're probably not doing yin. Even though it might be very yin-ish, again, that's one of the things that I'm going to say you need to hit about a minute. Minute and longer, you're starting to do yin. Anything less than that, you know, you might be doing something else. So today we're going to hold everything for 1 minute. And part of the reason we're doing that is just because we have a lot to cover. Okay, so we have a lot of different poses to do. So there might be some stuff you've never done, even if you've done yin for years, because this integrates stuff that I learned from another teacher named Andre Lapa. And he's the one who taught me about the shoulders. So part of this is it's a part of what I learned from Paul about yin, and then part of what I learned about working the upper body from my teacher, Andre. Okay? All right, so let's move into our first posture. It's a rather active yin posture, and it's called dragon pose. So before we get to dragon, let's just warm up a little bit with bear pose. Move around a little bit. Stretch the shoulders and the hips, the spine. Right? Just try and feel your way into those stiff, dull, achy places that might be there in your body, wherever they might be. And then a little down dog, same idea, sort of working the kinks out. All right, good. Let's bring our left foot forward and we'll come into a dragon flying high. Sorry that my head's cut off, but it's much more important that you see this part of my body. All right, so hips are forward and down. The heel is below the knee, more or less. And my torso is up and back. So I feel a stretch here. Okay, this is called dragon flying high. So we're articulating this joint here, the hip joint. We've brought our leg behind us. That's called hyperextension. And we're stretching the hip flexors. Maybe you feel it in the quads as well. That's fine. You could even bring that back foot in like we did in the last class if you were in the vinyasa class. I don't know that there's anyone here who was in that class, but if you were, or if you do it later online. Okay, so we're stretching the front of this hip. We're articulating this joint. And again, this is called dragon flying high. And we're just going to be here for a minute, which in yin standards is a fairly short amount of time. Okay, let's go ahead and switch sides. Okay, so we're coming in on the other side. Again, this is the dragon flying high. Torso up and back, hips forward and down. Stretch at the front of the left hip. Now, I'll just mention that, again, I get it if you signed up for today's class thinking we were going to be holding everything for 5 minutes and you know, you really wanted that kind of practice. My apologies that today's class is going to be a little bit different than that. But I think if you just relax and you enjoy the ride, you'll find that today's sequence is just as good as any other yin sequence. And you might enjoy it even more. And regardless of whether we enjoy it or not, I'll tell you that in general, it's good for our health. All right. So really yoga, it's much better to think of it as like a tonic or like medicine. It's something that we do because it's good for us in general, not because necessarily it's exactly what we wanted to do. It's not exactly like entertainment. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and come up out of that pose. And then we'll come to a seat. And the name of this sequence is mirrors, because what we'll be doing is mirroring what we do in the lower body with the upper body. Okay, so what we'd like to do here is bring our left hand or our right hand behind us. Okay, and then we're going to take our left hand and just place it like this alongside our left hip. Okay, now we gradually bring this right arm back like so, and we keep going back pretty much until we can't go any further. Now I'm going to turn so you can see this other side of me. And here's where the props can come in handy. So I can lean back like this. Okay, if you can't get all the way to the ground like that. And we want to avoid letting our right hand go out to the side, right? Because then I could lay all the way down and I'm not doing anything. What I'm wanting to do is bring that arm straight back behind me and then just get into that shoulder just a bit. And this is called hyperextension in the shoulder, the glenohumeral joint. I guess we're just working a different working the shoulder instead of the hip. And what we like to do today, my goal in making a sequence was to articulate the hips and the shoulders through all of their articulations. So there are 6 for each. So 2 hips, 2 shoulders, that's 12 for hips, 12 for shoulders, that's 24 postures that we need to get through today. That's why we're holding for a shorter amount of time. Okay, let's switch sides. So again, on this side, I can use the block if I want. It's not, required. Left hand is behind me, and then I just bring it straight back, right? Straight back, not out to the left, not out to the right, just straight back. And again, if I don't need the block, I come down to my elbow. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. And again, that's called hyperextension. Now, if it's going into my elbow, right, instead of my shoulder, I can put a little bend in my elbow. That's called a micro bend. And you might not even see it, right? You might not know I'm bending my elbow when I do that. But it's just enough that I don't really feel my elbow anymore. I feel it in my shoulder. Okay? And I just try and relax here and breathe for a few moments. I don't really recommend stretching your shoulders for 5 minutes at a time. I mean, I suppose you could, but generally the reason we work the hips and the low spine for such long periods of time is that the fascia and connective tissue in that area is very thick. Your hips are really, really thick and strong. Your shoulders are not. So generally we don't need as much time to work the fascia, the thinner fascia and joints, the upper body. Okay, let's go ahead and come out of that. We'll make our way back onto our back. Again, I'm just turning for camera purposes. You don't really need to turn at all as you do this. This is quite an active yin sequence, though, I will say that. So yin and yang are not opposites. They sit on a spectrum. And so, we can be more yin or less yin, more yang, yes, less yang. So today's class is a more yang yin class. It's a more active yin class. But again, it still is very much yin yoga. Okay, let's bring our legs in and we'll give them a little squeeze. And then let's go ahead and hinge up. So hands under the hips. The legs go straight up unless there's pain in your back, in which case you're just going to bend your knees a bit until the pain goes away. Okay? Lift the head and neck up. Take a nice deep breath in. And as you exhale, gradually lower those legs. And just before they touch, pause. Inhale, pop the legs up. And exhale, come on up to seated. All right. So now we come to an old yin favorite, which is the half butterfly. Okay, very familiar territory. If you've ever done a yin class, you've probably done this posture. Right leg straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh, and then we just relax forward and down. Okay, feel free to use props. You could put a block under your left knee, blocks under your forearms, a block on your forehead. You could rest your torso on a bolster. But again, I'll remind you that yin and restorative yoga are different practices. And if we don't need support, then we don't really want to use it because we are trying to stretch right back here. And if I have too much support, I might be really comfortable, but I'm not really feeling a stretch. You also don't need to yank or pull yourself down. But today, since we're holding for such a short amount of time, it's actually relatively safe to do that. So normally I really discourage that. But if you want it for 30 seconds or a minute, it's okay to use a little more force, to be a little more forceful. All right, let's switch sides. What you may notice in today's sequence is that the stretches for the hips, you might feel like you wish you could be there longer. You're like, oh man, I was just, getting into that. And then with the shoulders, you might actually feel like you wish it were shorter, right? You might feel like, God, when is he going to ring that bell? So I have this version of this sequence that I teach on retreat where, because we have about 2-3 hours to practice, we do the shoulders for just a minute, and then we actually do the hips for 5 minutes. So again, if time were not an object, that's the way I would do this sequence with you even today. But it would take us about 2 or 3 hours to do that. So as a yoga teacher, as a professional yoga teacher, I find one of the biggest challenges is to deliver a sequence that can be done in an hour, because that's what most yoga classes are these days, is they last about an hour. And so that's very challenging to produce something that really is satisfying and to deliver that in an hour. All right, let's go ahead and unwind from that. And let's move into our next posture. And then we'll take a break after that. Okay, so this is called quarter dog pose. It's similar to thread the needle, but it's not really the same thing. So you really need to pay attention, because otherwise you end up in threading the needle. So why don't you watch me come into it, and then you will try it in a moment, okay? Because people really mess this one up. So what we do is we come forward like this, bring the forehead to the ground, and then I'll bend my left elbow. Can you see that? My left hand is just under my right elbow, and my forearm is in front of my head. My hair, I think, is getting in the way. So this arm is like that. This arm is like that. And I draw my chest down and back, and I'm stretching right here. Again, I'm targeting that shoulder. Now notice that my right elbow is off the ground. If my right elbow is on the ground and my arm is straight, then I'm going to use a block like this, okay? So go ahead and come into your pose. And we just want a little sensation in that right shoulder, not too much. Just a little bit of sensation. We relax into it, we breathe and feel. Okay, and again, we are articulating the glenohumeral joint here. It's nothing fancy. It's not trying to get your body to do something that it doesn't naturally do. But we are bringing your body to its natural limit. Now, sometimes when you practice yoga, that changes, and that's fine. Sometimes it doesn't. And that's a very important thing to understand and to realize. Okay, let's switch sides. So we come into the other side. All right, same idea. This is called quarter dog. This time it's the right elbow I bend. Again, if I need to put my left hand on something in order to feel that left shoulder, then I will. I could also put my forehead on something if necessary, okay? So again, one common mistake, both amongst teachers and students in yoga, is the idea that we're trying to do something with our body that it can't do today. We're trying to make it into some kind of a super flexible thing or super strong thing or something like that. And I think this is the wrong way to think of it. Instead, what I'd like to invite you to do is think of yoga as going to your edge of what's possible for you. And then at that place, the interface of what is known and what is unknown, what is possible and what is not possible, you just learn to relax. And then sometimes you find that the next time you go there, you have to go further. And sometimes you don't. And that's just the way that it is. And it doesn't matter if we're talking physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. The principle is the same. All right, let's go ahead and unwind from that one. And let's relax on our back. That's called a rebound. Okay, so the rebound, my classes, we usually do it after every few poses. Today, it's once we've done both the hips and the shoulders and we relax back. And it's an important part of our practice. So we're just going to relax and feel in stillness. And then we'll counter stretch in a moment. Okay, let's bring those legs in and we'll give them a little squeeze. Video quality in and out, huh? Well, I'm not sure what I can do. Let me see. Let's try this. Thanks for letting me know, Michelle. I'm not sure if it's in and out for me as well. I think the speed of your connection may be off today. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, I don't really know what I can do about that. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully it clears up. I quit some stuff. Maybe it'll help clear things up a bit. Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's good to hear. All right. Okay, well, let's continue on. Sorry if you can't see. It is maybe confusing because we're doing something that, you know, where it's a lot of new postures. Not sure why it's cutting in and out. Things have been a little bit weird with the internet lately on my end. I'm not sure why browsers that were working stopped working, you know, for certain kinds of applications and things. So I've been trying to get everything to work, but not sure how. All right, let's continue on with our practice because otherwise we won't get through everything before we need to finish. So sorry about the video. Again, not really sure what I can do about it at this point. All right, let's move into our next posture, and I'll try and be very mindful of the audio part so that my instructions are very clear. Okay, we're going to hinge up. So hands under your hips. You take your legs, extend them up. You lift the head and neck. Take a nice deep breath in. Exhale, lower the legs toward the ground. Just before they touch, pause. Inhale, pop the legs up, and exhale. Bring yourself up to seated. Okay, let's move into a tabletop position. Okay. And we'll move into what I call a kickstand position. So you're on all fours. All right. So if you can't see me, you're just on all fours and you're facing the long side of your mat. So not the way you usually face. You're on all fours and you're facing the long side of your mat. Then you take your right leg straight out to the right. Okay, straight out to the side. So I call this a kickstand. So your right leg is like a kickstand. It goes out to the side. And you want to feel a stretch on the inside of your right thigh. Okay? Now your right toes can point forward, up, or away from you. Okay? Your foot can flex or point. Your hips can stay over your left knee, or you can rock your hips back closer to the ground. Your left foot could be underneath your buttocks or pulled in closer to your buttocks, or it could be behind the knee. That foot can also flex or point. You could be on your hands or on your forearms. Again, you can rest your forehead on a block, or you can rest your torso on a bolster. When we're holding postures for a short time like we are today, you may not want to fiddle with props as much, because by the time you get all the props set up, maybe how you usually use them, then the pose might be over. So, if there's a little discomfort, if you're maybe not quite as deep as you usually go, it's okay. All right, let's switch sides. Coming over to the other side, you might want to move over to the right side of your mat. Again, you're still facing the long side. And then you take that left leg out to the left. Sink your hips down into it until you feel stretch on the inside of your left thigh. Okay, so if you imagine, if you can't see me, if you imagine like being in tabletop and then dropping down onto your elbows, and then, so like a frog, but you take one leg out to the side. Okay, so you could call this like a type of half frog, which is indeed actually what it is. All right, so let's go ahead and come out of that, and we'll make our way onto our belly. Okay, so we're laying flat down on our belly. So we're going to work into the shoulders again, and so if you've never seen this before, you really need to pay attention to my verbal instructions, okay? And I'll try and be as clear as I can. So you're going to lay flat on your belly and bring the right arm straight out to the right, palm down, okay? Straight out to the right, palm down. From there, you'd like to begin to roll toward your right arm. If possible, you bend both knees, place the feet on the ground so the knees point straight up toward the ceiling. Your left hand is in front of your chest, pressing the left shoulder back. You can hold your head up, rested on a block, blanket, or on the ground. Okay? The stretch again is for your shoulder. You should feel this somewhere in the shoulder joint, maybe the front of the arm, maybe the front of the chest as well. If you're gritting your teeth or making a face, then you might be a little bit too deep. So can you just find a point where you're feeling a stretch, but you can also relax your face. You can breathe deeply. You can let go of tension. Good. Let's exhale. We'll come back onto our belly. And let's do the other side. So left arm to the left, palm down. And then from there, I begin to roll toward that arm, placing the feet on the ground, knees pointing upward. I take my hand in front of my chest and I gently push back, finding that stretch in my shoulder. Again, you see my head's kind of, well, maybe you can't see, but my head's in the air just because of the position of my shoulders. And, you know, that's where you might want a block or something underneath it. If we were going to be here for 5 minutes, I probably would grab something. But a minute, I could hold my head up for that amount of time. Remember to be kind and gentle to your shoulders. You don't want to baby them. When we baby something, it tends to get weaker and frailer, and eventually it gets injured. But at the same time, we don't want to abuse our body either. So those are two extremes we want to avoid. Good. This exhale will come out of that. And let's just rest on our belly this time. Okay, so rest on your belly. Bring one hand over the other hand and just rest your forehead on the back of those hands and relax for a moment. So one of the reasons why today's sequence feels so active is because we change positions of the body quite a bit. Now, that's not by mistake. The way I sequenced this was so that we're doing the exact same articulation in the hips as we are in the shoulders. So I could make this a more graceful sequence if we weren't doing that. But for me, that was an important thing to do, that we're just mirroring whatever we do in the hips, we do in the shoulders. Okay, let's go ahead and press back to a seat, and we'll bring our legs out in front of us for our next posture. So that was called abduction. Now we'd like to adduct our hips, the hip joint, the femur bone. So we're going to bring our femur, right femur over the left leg, okay, right thigh over the left, and then we bend that right knee and bring that foot alongside our left hip. Now, if we can, we do the same with the left knee. We bend that knee and bring that foot alongside the right hip. So this is often called in traditional yoga Gomukhasana, which means cow face. We're not going to do those fancy arms. We're just going to let the arms relax. But we're doing the legs here. Okay, so right knee over left. The feet are close to the opposite hip. Okay, now if you have trouble doing that, it can be done on your back. So you would just lay back and manually you would pull the legs across. Otherwise, just fold forward. And again, you can support your head with a block or forearms with a block. And this should be felt on the outside of the hips. Now, some of you are having trouble seeing me, but if you can see me, coming onto your back would look like that. And so you would just be actively pulling across to the other side with your arms, okay? And again, we'll be here just for a minute. So we're already about halfway through. Good. So let's come on up and we will switch sides. Okay, so same thing, other side. This is called a shoelace in yin. Its traditional name is Gomukhasana. All right, and then again, I come forward and down, or I come onto my back, and I want to feel a stretch in the outside of my left hip. Now, some of you have not practiced yin with me before, but many of you have. And those of you that have know that there are two qualities we want in every pose. One is we feel the stretch as described, in this case, the outside of the hip. And the other is we want to be sure that the pose feels safe in our body. All right? And only you know whether those things are happening or not. So sometimes students ask me as a teacher, does this look right? Well, it's not that important how it looks. It's much more important how it feels. Beautiful. Let's come on up. And then let's see about doing that same thing with our shoulders and our arms. Okay. So we'll again come onto our belly. And we will do the opposite of what we did a moment ago, but now with both arms in the shoulders, what we did in the last two poses ago. Okay, so the first thing you do is you're going to prop yourself up on your elbows. Then what I'd like you to do is bring your right forearm in front of your left forearm. So the palms are down and your forearms are basically parallel with the front edge of your mat. Make sure your elbows are under your shoulders instead of under your neck or under your chin. So you might draw them underneath you a little bit, under your chest. Take a nice deep breath, and as you exhale, begin to walk your hands away from one another as you lay down on your arms. And these are called dragonfly arms. Okay, so again, it should be experienced primarily as a sensation in the shoulders. Exactly where, it depends on you, it depends on your body. Okay. And again, if you are clenching your face, if you're holding your breath, clenching your jaw, then you might be pushing a little bit too hard. You might want to relax, come out of it a bit, find a softer edge, if you will. Okay, so switching sides, this time from the Sphinx position with the elbows propped up on our elbows. We're going to bring the left forearm in front of the right forearm. And then again on the exhale, we'll begin to straighten those arms. Okay, straighten those arms, laying down, and finding that stretch in our shoulders. Halfway through, so we've got about 30 seconds left here. Okay, so let's unwind from there and just relax on your belly. You can place your left hand over your right hand if you like. Rest your forehead on the back of the hands. You can just rest your arms by your sides or out to the sides. Turn your head to one side if you like. When rebounding, really the point is to be very comfortable, to find the position that's maybe most comfortable, most relaxing. Okay, so let's move on now. And now what we'd like to do is externally rotate the joint. So we moved, if you were keeping track of it, we've moved the joint back, we've moved it forward, we've moved it out to the side, we've moved it across the midline of the body, and now we're going to rotate the joint. So let's come back into a tabletop and we'll do a little bit of bear pose. Bear is like cat cow on steroids, if you will. We move freely pretty much any way that we like here on all fours. And again, the idea is not just to move randomly, but to let what you're feeling in your body guide you to move in specific ways to help the body release and move stuck energy and tension, what the Taoists call stagnant qi, stagnant energy. And again, let's come back into down dog. So this is just like what we did at the beginning, but we're probably going to feel different. We've done a lot of stretching since the beginning of our class, right? Okay, now we move into what in yin we call sleeping swan. This is like the yin pigeon pose. So your right knee comes toward your right wrist. The right foot is across at the left side of the mat. The hips come down and back. And you can keep up on your hands. You can drop down to your elbows, or you can even lay on your belly. Okay, the right knee can point straight ahead out to the right. The right foot could be close to the left hip or drawn closer to the front edge of the mat. The right shin can be at an angle, or it could even be parallel with the front edge of your mat. The hips can be squared off. You could use a block under your right hip, or some people rock their hips to one side or the other. None of these are incorrect, although some of them may be incorrect for your body type. Okay, so that's very important to understand that nothing is necessarily incorrect for everybody. But everything is wrong for somebody. I hope that makes sense. All right, let's switch sides. Okay, so we want to feel this in the outside of our left hip. And as I said earlier, or a moment ago, something that can be dangerous for one person can be fine or even healthy for someone else. For instance, some people are deathly allergic to peanuts. All right, peanuts are literally deadly for them. For other people, it's a healthy snack. Okay, does that make peanuts dangerous? It depends, right? And so it is with yoga. Some postures might be injurious, deadly, dangerous for some people. Other people, perfectly fine. Not only fine, good for them. They should maybe do it more. All right? So we always want to keep this in mind when we're practicing, because any pose that might be a normal yoga pose, perfectly fine for everybody else, could be dangerous for us. All right? Okay. Let's go ahead and come on out of this, and we'll take a look at doing that same movement in the shoulders. Okay, so again, we want to now externally rotate the glenohumeral joint, which is our shoulder joint. So again, if you're still having trouble seeing me, we're going to be laying back on our belly. And this is going to be similar to one of the earlier shoulder postures that we did. We lay down, we bring the right arm to the right, and now I want you to listen very carefully. You'll bend the right elbow, creating a right angle at the elbow joint. All right? Palm is still on the ground. So sometimes these are called cactus arms. All right? You have a 90-degree angle or a right angle at the elbow. The elbow still extends straight out from the shoulder. From there, as we did earlier, you begin to roll toward that shoulder. Okay, you want to keep your elbow and shoulder on the ground. You can draw your knees up so that they point straight out from your hips, and your hips should be facing the left wall. If you want more intensity, you take your left foot to the ground and your left knee points up. toward the ceiling, and you take your left hand onto that knee, and you just gently push your left shoulder back. But that might be too much for you. It might be too much for me. I'm really feeling that shoulder today. So again, a little bit of stress on a joint is very healthy for it. It's very good for it. Too much is injurious. So again, I said earlier, if you baby your body, it makes your body weak and frail. If you abuse your body, you will injure it sooner or later. All right, let's unwind from that. And let's pause for a moment. Just see if you can feel that the two shoulders, okay, they feel very different to me at this point. One of them is very alive. It feels very stimulated. It's tingling all over right now. I can feel the blood moving through there, right? It feels alive. The other one, by comparison, feels dull, kind of lifeless, sleepy. Okay, so these stretches really enliven our body. All right, the left arm to the left, palm down. We're going to bend that elbow to a right angle. And then we carefully begin to roll toward that shoulder. Again, if you can see me, I'm drawing my knees up so they come straight out from my hips. My hips are now facing the right wall. And then if I can, I take my right foot and I just place it on the ground in front of my left knee. And then I place my hand on that knee and just push that shoulder back. Gently, 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 gently. And this might be one of those where you're like, you know, how long is this going to last? Even though they're all just a minute, right? And again, in the hips, you might feel like, ooh, I wish I could stay here all day. And the shoulders, we might say, oh, how long is this going to be? Kind of intense. Just remember to breathe. It'll be over in no time at all. Good. Let's unwind from that back onto our belly. And let's just relax for a moment. Okay. You guys are doing great. We have just a few more postures, more articulations, and then we would have completed our survey of the hips and shoulders. Now, why do we do something like this? Well, if we're thinking from a Western physiological perspective, we're just trying to keep our joints functioning. We're trying to keep them healthy. We're trying to keep them strong. If you look at or talk to an elderly person, they probably have bad joints. And it's probably the source of a lot of pain and discomfort for them. So joint health is really important. And one way of thinking of yin yoga is yoga for your joints. Okay. So this is exercising your joints. Okay, let's go ahead and come up out of that and we'll come into a seat for the half saddle, which is next. Okay, so start with your legs extended out in front of you. And we'll just fold this right foot back like this as the start position. Now, if your foot hurts, add a little bit of padding with your blanket. Okay, the foot can point back or it can come out to the side like that. And then what we want to do is rotate this bone. It's called your femur, the thigh bone. Okay. And then the way we do that is by moving our foot away from our hip. So again, I don't know if you could see me, but that would be the maximum rotation. That's too much for me though. If you could see here, my hip is off the ground. So I'm doing that because if I pushed my hip down, I would tear my knee. So this is about where I would be, and I have a lot. Okay, so you might not be able to do that without breaking your ankle or your knee, so please don't. Again, respect the healthy limits of your body. Now, if you feel a stretch at the front of your thigh, you're going to stay right here. But if you don't, you can begin to lower back to the hands, elbows, crown of your head, onto a bolster, all the way back onto your back. Right? It's perfectly fine if your knee comes off the ground a little bit. Mine is. And for more intensity, you can bend the left knee, place that foot on the ground, and you can drop your left knee out to the left. And that possibly increases the sensation there at the front of that right thigh. And it's a pretty short amount of time for the hips, so enjoy it while it lasts. Beautiful. Let's switch sides now. Okay, so same thing, other side. If you're like me, you can just sort of pull your legs out and come into it on the other side. Most people can't do that, however. Again, many of us find that in life we have certain things that we can do that other people can't do. And sometimes those things are coveted. The things that other people are jealous of that we can do. And sometimes they seem very trivial, things like that, like I could pull my legs out on my back in this pose. No one's ever complimented me or been impressed that I could do that. But, you know, it's one of those things that not everyone can do. And so it's just sort of the way it is in life. Our society and people value certain things or impressed by certain things. But each of us are unique, and we maybe learn that more and more as we practice yoga, just sort of the uniqueness of our body and our experience as a human being. And we begin to, I think, appreciate the beauty of that, whether or not anyone else does. It's not, it's like seems to become less and less important. All right, let's go ahead and relax on our back, and we have one more to do for the shoulders, okay? So again, the concept behind the mirrors sequence, that's the sequence that I created, is to mirror, to do the same articulation in the shoulders as we did in the hips. So that was called internal rotation. Now we'll do that with our shoulder joint. So let's bring our right arm straight out to the right palm down. And remember, we're laying on our back. Okay, so you should be on your back right now. You're going to bend that arm and slide your hand, just the hand, underneath your back, as close to your shoulder as you can manage. Now, from your wrist to your elbow is exposed to the air. From your wrist to your fingertips is underneath your back, again, as close to your shoulder as you can manage. You already feel a lot in your shoulders, stay here. If you don't, draw your knees in and begin to slowly and carefully drop them to the right. Okay? Again, if you feel a lot of sensation at this point, stop. If you don't, bring your left fingertips to your right elbow. Not shoulder, elbow. Okay? The more that your left shoulder comes off the ground, the deeper the stretch for your right shoulder. And that is what we are targeting. Now again, I have students who need to roll onto their belly. So their arm is literally touching their belly and their chest when they do this posture. Okay? That's how far they have to go to feel a stretch. They are not better than you or I. Again, I don't know if you can see me, but I'm basically on my back. Right? All right, let's unwind from that. Release the arm. And again, we can feel the two arms. Hopefully you can feel one is tingly right now. It's been stimulated. And the other is sort of dull by comparison. Okay, left side, left hand under our back as close to our shoulder blade as we can manage. Again, you can stay there or draw the legs in and drop them to the left. You can stay there or bring your right hand over onto your left elbow. So, in spiritual circles and in yoga circles, there are all kinds of, nice little um, sayings and things like that that are things that we're supposed to learn from. And one is sometimes, that if you compare, apples and oranges, or an apple tree to a orange tree, and you say that, the orange tree is right and the apple tree is wrong, then you're creating a problem for the apple tree, whereas really they're both perfect. Apples are great, oranges are great. We don't need to try and turn an orange into an apple or vice versa. And so it is with us. Many of us are trying to be some version of a human being that we just really weren't cut out to be. And maybe someone told us we need to do that. Maybe that's the message we're getting from our culture, that we need to be tall or thin or bigger or stronger or more masculine or more feminine. But the truth is, we can just be exactly what we are. All right, let's unwind from that. Come on to our back. Now, this isn't to say that we can't grow spiritually and as individuals. Many of us have personal goals and desires. We have aspects of our own personality, perhaps, that we would prefer to change. And that can be a very noble goal. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it comes from a healthy place. But we want to be very careful about self-loathing and self-judgment and guilt and shame and things like this. If our change comes from these places, it can be more destructive than it is helpful for us, okay? All right, let's draw those legs in. We'll give them a squeeze and shake it out. That's called the leg cradle. Just sort of roll around on your back a bit. I'd like to apologize for the video trouble. Again, I have no idea what changed today. I know that, and with technology, they're constantly updating everything. So 1 week, everything will work exactly how it's supposed to. And then the next week, my camera will stop working. Not because the camera did anything, but because Google updated some driver or something. So apologies for that. I've not found a way to avoid that from happening occasionally. Hopefully the reception got a little better. Let me know if there are any questions. I'm going to leave you to do your Shavasana on your own. But if you have a question, reach out, find me. You can contact Leanne. She can give you my contact info. You can find me on Facebook. I've got a website, mahapathayoga.com. You can contact me on there. And I will be posting this class later on my Patreon page if you want to do it again. I don't know if the video will be any better, but it might be. I'll have to wait and see about that. I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. I hope you got a lot from that. And if you can, join me next week at 4:45 for Vinyasa and 6 o'clock for Yin here at Nirvana. All right. Tomorrow I will be doing I think I'll be doing a Yoga Nidra tomorrow at some point. So you can, again, check that out. That'll be on my Facebook page, I think. All right. Enjoy your Shavasana. I recommend about 6 minutes. Thanks, Deborah. Namaste. It's great seeing you. So 6 minutes, just relax in stillness. And then if you want to do longer, that's fine. But I wouldn't do any shorter than that. All right. Namaste, everyone. Bye-bye.